Quick reminder that Australians have to deal with Americans who think the entire country is a deadly wilderness full of cartoon characters. So if these stories make you grateful, you understand that Australia is an actual developed nation. Smash that subscribe button. Story 1. I work at Sydney Airport. American woman asked where she can pet a kangaroo. I said there are wildlife parks. She said, no, like in the wild. I said they're not domestic animals. She said, but they're everywhere, right? I explained they're common outside cities, but you don't pet them. She said, why not? I said they're wild and can be dangerous. She said in cartoons they're friendly. I told her cartoons aren't real. She looked disappointed, asked if she'd see any driving to her hotel. I said unlikely in the city. She said Australia is false advertising. She'd been here 20 minutes. Story 2. I'm a bartender in Melbourne. American guy asked why our beer is warm. I said it's not, it's cold. He said, this isn't cold. I explained, Australian beer is served slightly less cold than American beer. He said that's disgusting. Asked for ice. I said, we don't put ice in beer. He said, why not? I said it waters it down. He said he doesn't care. I gave him ice. He put it in his beer and complained it tasted watery. I said that's what ice does. He said, Australian beer is weak. I told him to order a different drink. He ordered another beer and asked for ice again. Same complaint. He left saying, Australia doesn't know how to serve beer. Mate, you ruined it yourself. Story 3. I work at a surf shop on the Gold Coast. American woman asked if we have shark nets at every beach. I said most popular beaches do. She said, what about the others? I said they don't. She said, so people just die? I said shark attacks are rare. She said she saw a movie where sharks attack all the time. I said movies exaggerate. She asked how many people die per year. I said less than cars kill. She said that's not comforting. Asked if we have shark repellent. I said there are devices, but they're not foolproof. She decided not to swim. Spent her beach vacation sitting on the sand looking terrified. What a waste. Story 4. I'm a taxi driver in Brisbane. American bloke asked why everything is upside down. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. He said, you're at the bottom of the world. Does water go up? I said no. He said, but gravity? I asked if he was serious. He said he'd heard things work differently below the equator. I said physics is the same everywhere. He said, even toilets? I said toilets flush based on design, not location. He said his teacher told him toilets spin backwards in Australia. I said that's a myth. He didn't believe me. Made me wait while he flushed a toilet at a gas station. It didn't spin. He looked betrayed. Story 5. I work at a wildlife sanctuary. American family freaked out over a huntsman spider in the bathroom. Huntsmans are harmless. I explained this. The dad said, it's huge. I said they're big but not dangerous. He said everything in Australia kills you. I said that's exaggerated. He asked if we have anti-venom. I said for some species, but huntsmans don't need it. The mom refused to use the bathroom. Made her kids hold it. Asked if there's a spider-free bathroom. I said spiders live here. She said this would never happen in America. I said America has spiders too. She said not like this. The spider literally just sat there. Story 6. I'm a tour guide at Uluru. American woman climbed the rock even though there are signs asking people not to. It's sacred to Indigenous Australians. I stopped her. She said she wanted a photo at the top. I explained it's disrespectful. She said, it's just a rock. I said, it's culturally significant. She said, I'm not from here, so it doesn't apply to me. I said, respect applies to everyone. She said, in America, you can climb any rock. I said, this isn't America. She complained to my supervisor. My supervisor banned her from the tour. She left a review calling Australia too politically correct. Story 7. I work at a restaurant in Perth. American man asked for shrimp on the barbie. I said, we don't actually say that. He said, "Yes, you do. I've heard it." I said it's from a tourism ad, not real Australian slang. He insisted we say it. I said we call them prawns. He said, "What's a prawn?" I explained they're similar to shrimp. He said, "So why not call them shrimp?" I said that's what they're called here. He said, "This is confusing." Ordered prawns, and then asked why they don't taste like American shrimp. I said they're the same thing. He said they taste different. I said maybe it's the seasoning. He said Australian food is weird. You ordered it, mate. Story 8. I'm a lifeguard at Bondi Beach. American guy ignored every flag and warning. Swam in a rip current area. We pulled him out. He was furious. Said we interrupted his swim. I explained he was in danger. He said he's a strong swimmer. I said rip currents don't care. He asked why we don't just remove them. I stared at him. He said, "Can't you fix the ocean?" I explained that's not possible. He said in Florida they manage beaches better. I said Florida has rip currents too. He said he's never seen warning flags there. I said they definitely have them. He went back in the water in the same spot. We pulled him out again. Banned him for the day. He called the police. They laughed at him. Story 9. I work at a bottle shop in Sydney. American woman asked why alcohol is so expensive. I explained Australian taxes on alcohol are high. She said that's ridiculous. Asked if we have cheaper options. I showed her the budget section. Still more than American prices. She said this is theft. I said it's tax policy. She asked if she could bring her own alcohol into restaurants. I said some places allow BYO with a corkage fee. She said, "I have to pay to bring my own wine?" I said yes. She said that would never fly in America. I said different countries have different rules. She bought one bottle and complained the entire time about socialism. "Ma'am, it's just tax." Story 10. I'm a receptionist at a doctor's office in Melbourne. American bloke came in demanding to see a doctor immediately. No appointment. I said we're fully booked. He said it's an emergency. I asked what's wrong. He said he had a headache. I suggested a pharmacy. He said he needs a doctor. I explained our healthcare system requires appointments for non-emergencies. He said, "I'll pay extra." I said that's not how it works. He said in America you can pay to skip the line. I said this is Australia. He sat in the waiting room for 3 hours hoping someone would cancel. Nobody did. He left angry, saying socialized medicine doesn't work. You had a headache, mate. Story 11. I work at a cafe in Adelaide. American woman ordered a latte. I made it. She took one sip and said it's wrong. I asked what's wrong with it. She said, "Where's the flavor?" I asked what she meant. She said American lattes have syrups and whipped cream. I said that's a flavored latte. She said all lattes have flavor. I explained Australian coffee is just espresso and milk. She said that's boring. Asked for caramel syrup. We don't have any. She asked for sugar. I gave her sugar. She put in 6 packets and said it's better now. Left a review saying, "Our coffee is bland." You ordered coffee. That's what coffee tastes like. Story 12. I'm a park ranger in Tasmania. American couple wanted to see a Tasmanian tiger. I said they're extinct. They said, "All of them?" I said yes, since 1936. They said someone told them there are sightings. I explained those are unconfirmed and unlikely. They asked if we could look for one. I said we're not searching for an extinct animal. They said, "But what if they're just hiding?" I said there's been no credible evidence in 90 years. They were convinced they'd be the ones to find one. Spent the whole hike looking in bushes. Saw a wallaby and got excited. Asked if it was a baby Tasmanian tiger. I said no, it's a wallaby. They left disappointed. Story 13. I work at a servo in the outback. American family pulled in asking how far to the next town. I said about 300 kilometers. They said, "In miles?" I said about 185 miles. The dad said that's too far. I said that's the outback. He asked why there aren't more towns. I said it's remote desert. He said America has gas stations everywhere. I said Australia is massive with low population density. He asked what happens if they run out of petrol. I said make sure you don't. He said that's bad planning. I said it's reality. They left confident, ran out of fuel 50 kilometers down the road. We had to send someone, cost them $400. Story 14. I work at an Aboriginal cultural centre. American woman asked if Aboriginal people still exist. I said, yes, obviously. She said, like in tribes? I said, some live traditionally, most live in modern society. She said, so they have phones? I said yes. She looked shocked, asked if they still hunt with spears. I said some do ceremonially, but most buy food like everyone else. She said her textbook said Aboriginal people were primitive. I said that's outdated and offensive. She said she didn't mean it that way. Then asked if she could take a photo with one. I said they're not zoo animals. She said she just wanted proof she met one. I asked her to leave. Story 15. I'm a real estate agent in Sydney. American couple looked at apartments and were horrified by prices. One bedroom for $700,000. They said that's insane. I said that's Sydney. They asked why anyone lives here. I said it's a major city with jobs. They said in America you can buy a mansion for that. I said not in New York or San Francisco. They said those are exceptions. I said Sydney is expensive too. They asked if we have cheaper areas. I said yes, but further from the city. They said they want to live in the CBD for cheap. I said that doesn't exist. They decided Australia is unaffordable and left. Good luck finding cheap rent in any major city, mate. Story 16. I work at a dive shop in the Great Barrier Reef. American guy asked if the reef is really dying. I said parts are bleached due to climate change. He said, but it looks fine in photos. I said photos are often from healthy sections. He asked if it's exaggerated. I said no, it's a serious issue. He said, my uncle said climate change is fake. I said I see the damage daily. He said, maybe it's natural cycles. I said, scientists disagree. He said, scientists are paid to say that. I asked who's paying them. He said the government. I said which government? He said all of them. I gave up. He went diving and later said the reef looked fine to him. Mate, you saw one spot for 40 minutes. Story 17. I work at a souvenir shop in Darwin. American woman wanted to buy a boomerang. I showed her options. She asked if they actually come back. I said traditional hunting boomerangs don't, but returning boomerangs do. She said, so some are fake? I said no, they serve different purposes. She asked for a demonstration. I said not inside. She bought one and immediately threw it in the parking lot. It didn't come back. She came back in furious. Said I sold her a defective boomerang. I asked if she read the instructions. She said, there are instructions? I showed her the paper inside. She said boomerang should be intuitive. I said, it's a skill. She demanded a refund. I said all sales final. She left the boomerang in the bin and said Australia is a scam. Story 18. I work at a zoo in Sydney. American dad got angry that our koalas were sleeping. He said, wake them up, we paid to see them. I explained koalas sleep 20 hours a day. He said, that's lazy. I said it's their biology, they need to conserve energy. He said, just poke one. I said absolutely not. He said his kids were disappointed. I said there's a sign explaining koala behavior right there. He didn't read it. Asked for a refund specifically for the koala exhibit. I said no. He said, so you're just gonna let them sleep? I said yes, they're animals, not performers. He tried to throw a coin at one to wake it up. Security escorted him out. Banned for life. His kids were mortified. Story 19. I'm a waiter in Queensland. American woman ordered a flat white and lost her mind when it came in a small cup. She said, this is a kid's size. I explained, that's a standard flat white. She said in America coffees are bigger. I said, "This is a double shot of espresso with milk. It's meant to be this size." She said, "I need caffeine, not a thimble." I offered her a long black or a larger size. She said, "Just fill this cup to the top." I said that would ruin the ratio. She didn't care. I filled it with milk. She took one sip and said it tastes like hot milk. I said that's what she asked for. She said Australian baristas don't know coffee. You ruined it yourself, love. Story 20. I work at an aquarium. American bloke asked if our sharks are trained. I said no, they're wild animals. He said, so they could attack the glass. I said the tanks are designed to prevent that. He said, but have you tested it? I said yes, extensively. He asked, what happens if a shark breaks through? I said it won't. He wasn't satisfied. Started tapping on the glass aggressively. I told him to stop. He said, I'm just checking if it's strong. I explained tapping stresses the animals. He said, they're sharks, they don't have feelings. I called security. He argued that he was doing a public service testing the glass. Security removed him. He yelled that we're hiding dangerous conditions. Mate, the only danger here was you. Alright, that's it for Americans saying stupid things in Australia. If you visited Australia and didn't assume they ride kangaroos or fight crocodiles daily, you're already ahead of the curve. Make sure you're subscribed for more, and I'll see you in the next one.